What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for November 15th, 2022. Please excuse my voice. I'm still kind of sick and was up late watching that debacle that was Monday Night Football. And just going to end it right now. The season is not over. It is not the end of the world. They didn't play well. Washington is a division team. They weren't going undefeated anyway. So relax. Don't let those negative old Philly attitudes and thoughts creep back into your head. Now, it was a shitty game. And I'm seeing all over on Twitter about, oh, the refs this, the refs that. And listen, the refs were horrible. They missed the Goddard face mask. I don't know what I've lost a lot of respect for Heineke. I mean, I guess it's a smart move in the grand picture because he got the 15-yard penalty, but that's just a punk move. 100% a punk move, knowing that they're gonna do it. Like, come on, like that, whatever. But there definitely were some missed calls. However, in the grand scheme of things, the rankings of why the Eagles lost yesterday, the refs were not number one. The refs were not number one. That game was lost in the first half when you couldn't get Washington off the field on third down and we're letting them go on 13, 14, 15, 16 play drives. That's what lost that game. And it affected the offense because the offense seemed like they were in sync there at the beginning, but they just could not keep anything because they were on the bench the entire time. You have to get them off the field on third down. That's the number one reason they lost that game. And yes, I'll give you Quez Watkins, but that play in the big picture is not why they lost that game. It should not have had to come down to that. That defense in the first half is what lost the game. Second half, it was the offense. They couldn't get anything going. Gannon made the adjustments. They only gave up 6 points until that fluky touchdown at the end. They just did not play a complete game. It happens. It's a long 17-game season. It's not the end of the world. If they'd have gotten beat 50-0, I might worry a little bit, but they were in the game. They played like absolute dog shit and still had the opportunity to win the game. So everybody just relax. Don't let these negative old Philly attitude comes in. I know it's hard because we have not had to deal with an Eagles loss since January 16th of this year. So it's been a while, and sometimes you kind of forget. It's different with the Phillies. It's different with the Sixers and Flyers. The Eagles are a different beast. So everybody breathe. Yes, my Tuesday's going to be shitty too because they lost. However, it's all going to be all right. Get a good get-right spot with the Colts coming up. Although, you got to stop Jonathan Taylor on third down. I don't care whether it's Matt Ryan or Pat Ryan or Buddy Ryan at quarterback. You need to make sure you're stopping them on third down. So hopefully Gannon gets his people together and they come up with a game plan to fix that because that's going to be one of those things on that could affect them later in the season. The weakest part of our team right now, though, the return game. Covey is just terrible. Sure, he might be fast, but hey, let me run 100 miles an hour right into the tacklers. So that's something worth keeping an eye on special teams. But enough about that. We're going to be doing later this week, either tonight or tomorrow night, we will do the Back to the Future. So check that out wherever you get your podcasts on the 94 Eagles. Might do it tonight. Just keep the misery going. Why not? But this is new Philly. The Eagles are going to be okay. So everybody just breathe and relax. And yes, we still have the tiebreaker over the Vikings. So that's going to be huge. But big Temple game tonight. The Owls come back to the Liacouras Center to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores. Don't really know much about them. I know they're SEC, so anxious to see how they can kind of continue to roll this after beating Villanova. So be tuning in tonight at 7 for that. But this day in Philly sports history, we're going to go back to 1984. So November 15th, 1984, the Flyers retired Bobby Clarke's number 16 jersey number, or I guess in hockey they call it their sweater. The Flyers won that game that year, that night 6-1 over the Hartford Whalers. And we talked about it earlier this week, or I guess it would have been later last week, that this was a year the Flyers went to the Stanley Cup Finals, lost to the Edmonton Oilers It was Pelle Lindbergh winning the Venzia Trophy for the best goalie. This was the season before he passed away in the car crash. But back to Bobby Clarke. Bobby Clarke played 15 seasons at NHL, all with the Flyers. Some pretty cool stats. They made the playoffs 13 times out of those 15 years, and including 4 Stanley Cup Finals appearances, and they won the 2. What I didn't realize is the 2 times they didn't make the playoffs were very early on, and that was when they were still a relatively young franchise. So just interesting. He was a first ballot Hall of Famer, 358 goals, 852 assists, which were 4th all time when he retired. He ended up with 1,210 points, which was 11th all time when he retired. Since then, I mean, obviously he's dropped down way, way, way further, but it was a different game back when he played. It was way more physical, where that's where they got the Broad Street Bullies name and everything. But still not a bad career for Bobby Clarke. For guys that are my age and a little bit younger, you might not even, because I don't have any recollection of Bobby Clarke, the player. I know Bobby Clarke as the general manager or the president or whatever title Ed Snyder used to give him in the front office. But he had 2 stints as the GM of the Flyers, and he just can never get over the cup or over the hump and win the cup. And a lot of times it was goaltending. They really just, like I mentioned a couple days ago, they never recovered after Pelle Lindbergh died. So he also took the Minnesota North Stars at the time to the Stanley Cup final, and they lost to Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr's Penguins. So he just could never get over the hump as a GM. But I think most people probably will remember him for the Eric Lindros saga, where he had a collapsed lung, tried to fly him on the plane. Carl Lindros was Eric Lindros' agent, accused Bobby Clarke of trying to kill him. And there was definitely a very public disagreement and issues with them. Ultimately, it led to Lindros kind of later in his Flyers career missing time, not missing time, fighting with Lindros. There was a contract dispute where he wanted to be paid as the best player, and Bobby Clarke's like, well, you damn well better play like the best player first. And it was just kind of things like that. And I don't know whether it was jealousy from Clarke, whether Lindros' parents were just complete and total dicks too. Like, I don't know. They have since made up, and they're on good terms now. It just was a frustrating time as a Flyers fan because they were good. They just could never get over that hump and win a cup. But on this day in Philly sports history in 1984, the Flyers officially retired Bobby Clarke's number 16 jersey. He had retired the year before. And I will say, for all of his faults as a GM, he was a super great player. Again, first ballot Hall of Famer. And I will say that nobody epitomizes a Flyer than Bobby Clarke. Like, when I think of the Flyers, I picture him with his front teeth missing, smiling with the long, shaggy afro hair, just kind of drinking a beer, like celebrating a win or whatever. So, like I said, he is what the Flyers were. Like, he kind of epitomizes that old school mentality. The game has obviously changed, and that's part of why he retired. But they named the Flyers MVP wins the Bobby Clarke Trophy. So he's well ingrained in this organization, or as he would say, the organization. But even when he left to do other things, he went to the Florida Panthers for a year or two, went to the North Stars for a couple of years. He always seemed to come back to the Flyers. So Bobby Clarke is Mr. Flyer, I guess you could call him. So shitty end to the Eagles game. Let's move on. Let's not dwell on it. We get a game coming up. It happens. They were not going to go undefeated. Big Temple game tonight. This day in Philly sports history, we retired Bobby Clarke's number. It's Tuesday. It's cold. Go stay warm today. Have yourselves a Tuesday. Until next time, I will see you when I see you.